Right, it's another show, another special. It seems like every episode is a special. Well, it isn't it? Every show is special. So with what's going on, obviously in Palestine, it's been very difficult to put out episodes. Sometimes it doesn't feel right, etc. So a lot going on. It's very sad times. I've tried to get members of the Jewish community to come on the show. I was finding it extremely difficult until now. So we have a rabbi from New York, managed to speak to the rabbi. I don't want to say his name because I'm going to get it wrong and I don't want to offend, okay? So this is what happened. It was a very good conversation. Before you see it, I'm not an expert. I'm just a normal person. I don't claim to be an expert. I'm just asking questions, okay? So please don't get at me like, why have you done this or why have you done? I'm just asking normal questions, okay? I just want to know, and the rabbi is in front of me, so I was just asking the questions that came to mind. We did have a few issues with the connection, etc., so it got a little bit difficult, but this is what happened. Check it out. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello, thank God. You good?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. I know we've tried to have this meeting prior. It hasn't quite happened, but I really appreciate your time, sir. Can I just get your name correct, sir? Is it? Could you tell it? I know it's.
Yes. Okay, with help of the mighty name is Rabbi Yisroel David Weiss.
Yusroi Dovid Weiss.
Weiss. If you say Rabbi Weiss, it's fine.
I do apologize if I get that wrong, sir, but thank you so much.
That's fine. It's fine.
Shalom to you, sir.
Thank you.
So I'm based in London. You're currently in New York. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I was just wondering if you could just give me a brief kind of outline of your kind of background. Were you born and raised in New York? How did you become a rabbi, sir?
Yes, I was born and raised in New York. My parents are from immigrants from Hungary, and actually my mother's family is Polish, but they moved to Hungary. She was born in Hungary and then came over when she was very young, like 3 years old. My father escaped when the Nazis came into Hungary and went through Italy. From Italy, came to the United States. His parents were.
It's frozen. Why is it frozen?
Something happened. We got cut off or something.
Yes, I haven't got a clue what happened. I'm in a panic right now as to what on earth has happened. It could be. I think it's me. I don't know. I don't want to place blame, but thank you for hanging around.
Okay, whatever it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. Okay.
So Anyway, basically, I come from a very religious family. I got a very religious community. And they're true to the religion and anti-Zionist. My father-in-law also. I married into a family was in Auschwitz. My father-in-law. They both passed on. My father-in-law and my father. Basically, very religious people and anti-Zionist. So the community is very strongly anti-Zionist.
Okay, so
and I'll explain over that with God's help.
Could you just explain to me what it takes to be a rabbi? Because I don't know, sir. So if you could just what that entails. With the help
of the Almighty, you have to go to schools. We have schools, religious education, and then there's rabbinical schools afterwards to finish to continue on, and basically that's it's called. I went to whatever different rabbinical schools in the U.S. and I actually studied a year in a rabbinical college that's not existing anymore in London.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yes. And a very great rabbi. Yeah.
Roughly, how long does it take to become a rabbi?
Well, basically you're starting your Jewish education from. When you start speaking, basically, and the more you, so we're constantly the majority of our day, I mean, almost entirely, is spent studying the Torah, and so it's basically it's a continuous learning to complete, and you really never complete. I mean, basically, you have to finish the law books, the certain law books, but then there's a continuation of continuing to learn. So every Jewish child in our communities usually is very, very well educated. Just even when they graduate, basically.
I think what I'm trying to get at is at what point are you called a rabbi? Sorry, I just don't know, sir.
Well, there's when a person rabbi means teacher. It's either when you are teaching in a school, or you're a pulpit rabbi. There's different types of rabbis. You have a synagogue, you have a pulpit rabbi, or you are. But the Rebbe is called, a teacher is the ones who give classes and so forth, who teaches, is usually called also a rabbi. And then there's rabbis who, the ones who are, the halachic authorities, who are, if that comes questions in law, and there's different ordinations for that.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I'm only asking because I presume it's not easy to become a rabbi. So once you become a rabbi, it must hold high regard and respect amongst the Jewish people. That's
except amongst the Zionists who
are
things like that, who are the ones who oppose our teachings. You will find Reform Jewry who are very upset with the Torah authorities because they do not consider. Because they simply are uncomfortable with the fact that we do not give them any recognition as a legitimate representation of Judaism. So even if they may be learned, we will not feel that they're Torah authorities. Case in point, let's just start with Reform Judaism. That was like 300 years ago. Started a movement that said they're going to reform, they're going to change the Judaism. And they said, so we know that Torah was given to us, and then maybe when I'm speaking on the program, the Torah is given by God 3,000 years ago to Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher, and it's a covenant that we have to uphold, and we're never allowed to change that covenant because it's godly given. So we are exacting in the upholding of the Torah till today. And whenever we have a question, and I usually give an example, for instance, when electric came to being, so the Torah were not allowed to make fire on the Sabbath,
right?
Because God created the world 6 days, 7 days rested. We're not allowed to make fire or work on the Sabbath. So the question became, what about electric opening the lights on the Sabbath? Is that considered? So the rabbis all delved into this issue, and they all decided that it's basically you're not allowed to use electric on the Sabbath. You're allowed to have the lights burning from before the Sabbath, but basically to use electric, you can't, because that would be like fire and other issues, technical issues that would be forbidden to use on the Sabbath. But so in other words, what we do is we constantly will take any new development in the world or any issue and try to understand how this would be compatible or not compatible according to the laws of the Torah. That's the way our life goes for 3,000 years. Now, Reform came along and they said they're going to change the Torah. They said Moses made the Torah.
When you say they, sir, who is they? Sorry.
This movement of Reform, the leader was Moses Mendelssohn,
right,
who was a scholar, and we say his name should be obliterated. He came along, he was a learned person, but he was totally he was a heretic. He basically decided that he tell the world that it's not, that Judaism is basically that the Torah is not given by God. Only Moses made the Torah. Therefore, you can pick and choose what you want and still remain under the name Judaism. So the rabbis around the world they issued a fatwa basically in his time. Like 200 of the greatest rabbis of Europe issued a fatwa that we're not allowed to go into the temples, Reform temples, which they had started creating. We had many issues that we're not allowed to mix with them, even do good deeds with them, because we consider it a very rebellious group. But they wanted that the world should accept them, so they made their temples instead of synagogues, they made temples, something, and different issues, and they ordained rabbis. Although most of them are totally ignorant of the laws of the Torah, yet they ordain according to their system of ordaining whatever they need for that. And so basically, they made a new type of Judaism, And it's but a new type of religion that they call Judaism. Basically, they put the stamp on it that's Judaism, but it's totally incompatible to Judaism. In the Ten Commandments, it said you're not allowed to do work on the Sabbath. They do with impunity. They work on Sabbath. They eat non-kosher. All of them eat non-kosher. They have no problem with that. Things that are the basics of the Torah. Yet they say they pick and choose what they want because it was given not by God. So it's a movement that's totally a heretic movement. Yet it goes under the label of Judaism, and today it's the largest branch, what they call a branch of Judaism. But it's not Judaism, so we don't. So and we the Orthodox Jews will never recognize them. Their rabbis are not rabbis by us. We do not give them any recognition. They're if they give issue a divorce. A divorce is very complicated. It just has to be written properly and everything. So it's not considered anything by us. We tell them it's not legal. It's not bound. It's not binding. So they're very upset with that. In fact, ironically, even in the state of Israel, that's trying to masquerade as a Jewish state. So they made their rabbinate, not including reform, even though they're the majority of Jews around the world, but they did not include them in their rabbinate, even though they took millions and millions of dollars from them. And so the reform leadership is very upset. They said, "Here, you're taking money from us. You look at us to support and so forth, and you include us in everything. But when it comes to the brass tacks, when it comes to giving it a law, or something that's in regard to a law, you do not accept our rabbis." So they say that's evil, whatever they want to say. So therefore, but what's the reason why the Israeli government doesn't accept them? And now they're starting to accept them, by the way, after 75 years or something. But the reason, because they knew if they'll do that, they'll become disqualified by the very religious, as that their words are nothing, that the rabbinate is a joke, because Reform Judaism is nothing. So, but I'm just saying it's a little complicated, but that's Reform. We are Orthodox, basically. So, Zionism, we stand against the Reform, that it's not acceptable. We stand against Zionism, because Zionism is just a mirror of what Reform did, just on the flip side. Instead of trying to assimilate in the communities of by dropping religion, they try to make their own state.
I think from my point of view, the term Zionism and Judaism and Israel, they've all kind of meshed themselves together, and I think now we're starting to see these words being put apart and being like, well, actually, you don't have to be one to be the other, if that kind of makes sense.
Well, it's true. That's exactly what they try to do. They try to conflate that it should be as one, and incorporate the religion into the movement, or the religion into Judaism, and therefore they use that as a form of intimidation, that if anybody stands opposing their Zionism and their state, they'll be able to scream anti-Semitism, and they'll claim a legitimacy in taking the land because it's part and parcel of the Torah that God gave us the land. So that's all true what you're saying, that they try to do that, but sometimes the more there's alternative media, the world becomes aware of the large Jewish communities that are totally opposed to Zionism, yes, and exposes that it's not Judaism, it's a farce.
Can I just confirm the term Zionism is that Israel becoming whole? Could you just confirm what that term means? Sorry, for anybody.
Just by the way, is this part of the program now? Or
Yes, sir, this is it. We're being recorded. Did you think we were just...
This is before the program.
Oh, no, sir. We are recording. Sorry.
Well, then I will do as we always do, that I pray to the Almighty.
Oh, please do, sir. Sorry. Please do.
His truth and His wisdom, that I may be worthy of conveying His message, and so sanctify His name.
I apologize, sir. I thought because the internet went down, maybe there was a communication break. Yeah. I do apologize. We are filming.
So, and I pray that we should, to sanctify His name, bring peace to the world, and shalom. But basically, yes. So, first of all, my name is Rabbi David Weiss,
yes,
of the Torah Character International Jews United Against Zionism. So Judaism is a religion of 3,000 years. It's a covenant that we Jewish people made 3,000 years ago. Moses, as I mentioned, went up to on Mount Sinai, took the Torah from God, where all the Jews, must be over 1 million Jews, because there were 600,000 males from 20 to the age of 60, and their families. And they was all standing and saw how God spoke to Moses. They took the Torah. We made this covenant with God to be subservient to him and uphold the laws of the Torah. That's exacting, as I've said. We keep it till today. We strictly adhere to the laws of the Torah because it's from God. Now, Zionism is the transformation to nationalism. It's a mere 130 years, 140 years in that area that started a movement of people that wanted a nationalist movement, a concept of a simple nationalist entity to have a land, an army, Olympic team, and whatever the strappings of a country is.
Yeah.
So, but they're totally void of the godliness that's what Judaism is. So in other words, it has the facade. They put on the facade. They use the name Israel, which is Jacob in the Torah. They use the Star of David. They simply want to present themselves to the world as Judaism, that it's something legitimate, that it's from God, and therefore to intimidate, that people won't stand up and oppose them. But it's purely antithetical, purely not Judaism. It's contradictory to Judaism. It's a pure materialistic concept of having a piece of land. The ones that made the land, Judaism, as I say, is a religion subservient to God. Our leaders, our advisors, our authorities are rabbis, because that's what Judaism means. It means somebody who studied the Torah, who's proficient in the laws of the Torah, and leads the community in the ways that God, to tell us what God wants of us. Zionism was led by a group of people. I carry this picture around when David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister, convened, reading the Declaration of Independence in 1948 in Independence Hall. So you see, sitting at the dais, so you're seeing sitting here, not one of them is covering their head.
Right.
And so they're making a Jewish state. You have Stars of David, Theodor Herzl. That beard is not a religious beard. It's like a goat who has a beard. It has nothing to do with religion. They're making a convenient national home for themselves, and they simply found that what would be practical for them, they decided to go to Palestine to make their home. They were really thinking of Uganda, Patagonia, next to Brazil. Why? Because they're looking for a lush land, a productive land that they'll be able to be successful in having a national home. They even despised the religion almost entirely. They were non-religious. They just call themselves Jewish because of their birth, but not because they are practicing the religion. And they detested the religion, as most of them in their writings stated. We have writings of Theodor Herzl. One of the many books we published called Traditional Torah Opposition to Zionism, historical documents. And we have here one of the writings we have, let's just say Theodor Herzl, who was the father of Zionism.
Yep.
And he wrote in his own diary, he wrote, "The way to solve the problem of anti-Semitism is to speak to the head priest of Vienna, to get an appointment with the Pope, to make a mass conversion of all the Jews of Austria to Catholicism."
Right.
That is the solution to our problems, that we should all convert out of our religion. It should be done on a Sunday in the middle of the day with music and pride publicly. We are the last generation that held on to the faith of our forefathers. The conversion would be in St. Stephen's Cathedral. That's just an example of what we're dealing with. In other words, the religion wasn't something issued by they. It was something that they tested. They were rebels against their parents, against their grandparents. I shouldn't say against their parents, because a lot of these people from the Zionist movement were children of the Reform movement that I was speaking about before. The Reform, so they were totally ignorant of the religion. They had left the religion already, the parents. So the religion meant nothing, and what the Torah requires of us meant nothing. So basically, Zionism is a ersatz Judaism. It's another type of a false type of Judaism, but presented to the world as a legitimate representation. So it's a different type to ersatz Judaism. It's nationalism. Judaism is subservience to God, and that we are strictly bound by the laws of the Torah. Zionism is nationalism, totally free of God and the Torah. They declare constantly, proudly that they're the only democracy or something in the Middle East or something like that. Although that's also a farce, because they're democracy for their henchmen, for their people, not for the Arab and Muslim people. So it's like different. But that's just a side issue. But clearly in other words, you're free, you're democratic. You don't have to keep the laws of the Torah. Well, Judaism tells us that we are, by the cost of our lives, we die for our religion, and that we're bound by the laws of God. We made a covenant with God, right. and yeah. So that's basically. But now we go a step further. In the laws of the Torah, we have three concepts that are very important to know. We were sent into exile. We were told by God when we made this covenant to go up to the Holy Land, and be in the Holy Land. That is a place that we should be on a high level of serving God. We had to build a temple. King Solomon built a temple, that we should be close to God. Our issue of Judaism is to be a nation to serve God. That's what it is. A spiritual concept. We have a body, but the body is to serve our souls, to be able to serve God. But we were warned by God in the Torah many times, replete with verses, that if we are not going to be on this high level of holiness, then the land will reject us. In other words, it's like a body is sensitive. We cannot put in a foreign object, transplant a heart without medication, because that the body should not reject. It's sensitive, that the land will reject us. In fact, we were warned by the prophets, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, that we will be driven from the land if we will not be on that high. They saw that we're not on that high level required. Not that they were a bunch of sinners, but they're not on that level required. And what happened was 2,000 years ago, that's around 1,000 years after we made this covenant, after we went into the Holy Land. We went into the Holy Land by miraculous happening. The walls of Jericho sunk, and so it was a godly issue. Then they went in. We were there for a long period. Then we were driven from the land because we say because of our sins. We were driven from the land. So 2,000 years ago, around, the temple was destroyed. We were dispersed amongst the nations, and God warned the Jewish people that we are under oath. One, not to return en masse in large numbers to the Holy Land. Second, not to rebel against any nation. And thirdly, we're not to make any attempt to end exile, because it's a godly decree happening, not because we were lacking in physical prowess and physical powers, not because we were lacking guns. It was simply because God said, because of our sins, we were driven from the land. It happened through the Roman Empire, through the Greeks, and so forth. But the hand behind all of this is God. And even though God is totally compassionate, he said we have to be dispersed amongst the nations in order that we should return to him, break our haughtiness, to be humbled and serve him. Great rabbi of Germany of the time of the Reform movement, who rebuilt in Germany, like the very religious community, the Orthodox, used to say that God is perfect in his doing. So and he sent us into the world to break our haughtiness. At the same time, he wanted us dispersed amongst the nations, that we should be a light unto the nations, that they should see somebody who's God-fearing and learn from them how to emulate God. So we have to emulate God, be compassionate, just as God is compassionate. We should be compassionate. We say, just as God is compassionate, we should be compassionate. So in other words, it should both bring us to a higher level of holiness. At the same time, the world should be able to learn from, ideally, when a Jewish person is doing what he's required to do. Now, we are under oath not to end this exile, not to attempt to recreate a Jewish sovereignty, any Jewish kingdom. When that will change is when the Almighty, with his compassion, will make a metaphysical change in the world, where all humanity will recognize that there's one God, and then there will be a change, a miraculous change, that they will stop being atheists, and everybody will join together and come serve God, not become Jews, but serve God in harmony. And then God, without any human intervention, will build the temple, rebuild the temple. So as Jews, we were dispersed amongst the nations for 2,000 years. We went through the Inquisition. We went through the Crusades. We went through many trials and tribulations, suffering, blood libels. But we never, even though when there was times when Jewish people in Europe had was called the Golden Age of Jews. They even had some very well-to-do communities. They never attempted to reestablish a Jewish land, a Jewish sovereignty anywhere, because it's forbidden for us. The rabbis always warned them. Maimonides from Egypt, Maimonides, who was very well known. There's hospitals called Maimonides, Moses Maimon of blessed memory. He was one of our great leaders, a codifier of Jewish law. Anyway, so they all told the Jewish people, have patience. Do not attempt to return, because it's God's will that we should be where we are. One day when God will feel fit, he will change the whole situation. There'll be a change in the world. Zionism comes along and they say, whoa, reform. They tried to reform Judaism to assimilate, being non-religious, dressing with non-Jewish clothing, doing everything so they should seem exactly like the other people in the world, and it didn't work. They still, a lot of times looked at, there was anti-Semitic things happening. So they came along and they there was just one of the excuses why they said they wanted to create a state. Really, it was the Satan driving them. They wanted their national home. We said, why do you have to keep the name Judaism? Just, drop everything. It's not good to drop everything. You're required, because you were born from a Jewish mother, to keep Judaism. But why are you pulling us into your quagmire, into your filth? But they came along and they said, we have another plan. Instead of assimilating, like Reform Judaism attempted to do in Germany and in Austria and so forth, and around Europe, they said, we will make a new concept, a Jewish home. We're going to reestablish a Jewish home. And they called it Eschalta de Geula, beginning of redemption. So first they weren't religious, but then they incorporated religion, and they made all the trappings. They tried to make it look like it's something holy. Why? Because when they wanted to go to Uganda or Patagonia, they understood that you need massive amounts of money to create a state and backing from the world. And in Uganda, who's going to help them? Some people will help them. Who's going to really help them? But if they'll go to Palestine, they're going to be able to come to the evangelistic Christians, and they'll tell them, hey, the children of Israel returning to the land of Israel, like it says in the Bible, automatically they'll get a lot of support. And then there's Jews who are Reformed, who don't know the religion. There were already 2 generations of Jews who don't know the religion, but they knew that Jews yearn for Jerusalem and so forth. So they use these yearning, twisting it, misconstruing what it's all about, and say, oh, the beginning of the redemption, we're going back to the home that was given to us by God. So they use all these concepts to reestablish a so-called Jewish nation. But it's not reestablishing, because the Jewish nation that was spirituality, to be humble before God, to be subservient. Zionism is a total different issue. It's a pure evil. It's a nationalist movement that rejects the laws of the Torah. Let me just finish one little point here. Please. So they have 3 issues here. The essence, the root, the essence of Zionism is blasphemy. That it's a nationalism. The essence is that God can protect us also. That when they ask them, why are you making the state? They'll tell people, what do you mean? Who protected us by the Crusades, the Inquisition, by Hitler? Where was God? They laugh at the religious. They scorn us. And where was God? We have to have a gun to protect us. So that's blasphemy. So it's rooted in nationalism and refuting the power of God, and it's also breaching. So in its essence, it's heresy, but in its actuality, in the creation of the state, it breaches all the laws of exile. We're not allowed to establish a Jewish sovereignty. That's the basic decree of the Judaism, that we have to remain in exile. And that would mean that we were not allowed to have a Jewish state, even if Palestine would be uninhabited. It would be we would still be forbidden to have it. But now that they're creating it in a land where the Palestinians live, so now they're breaching all the laws of the Torah, not to kill, not to steal, to oppress a people. This is all totally contradictory to all of what basic Judaism is, to emulate God. All the laws of the Torah is breached by this establishment of the state. The one little more point I'm going to just add, on top of all that, it's Jews have to show gratitude for good that's done to them. That's the basics of the Torah. The Jewish people in the 2,000 years that we suffered, in the last 1,000 years, Muslim countries took in the Jews. I mentioned Maimonides before, a great leader. He lived in Egypt. The Jewish people ran away from Europe many times, or they were thrown out. And where did they go? The Muslim countries took them in, embraced them, and we flourished as distinctly Jews amongst Muslims, even though we have distinctly different religion. But that was not any impediment.
They are similar, though, aren't they? There is a lot of similarities.
So we live together. Yeah. So how now to go and say, and now to create the state, they have to give a narrative. So they tell the world, the people are opposing us, It's because they hate the Jews, because they're anti-Semitic. So they're vilifying these very same people who took us in and gave us a home. And so how dare they? It's that instead of gratitude, they're repaying with evil. So it's in every way you look at Zionism, it's contradictory to Judaism. It's unacceptable according to our Jewish religion. And that's why we stand in total opposition around the world, the ones who are true to the Torah.
So let me ask then, after the World War, surely the Jewish people needed somewhere to go, somewhere to call home. Yeah? So...
No.
So then where would they go then, sorry, in your opinion?
Well, with the help of the Almighty told us that we should be dispersed amongst the nations. We have been living in every single country, as we are in the United States, in England, and Europe, and in the rest of the countries, in Iran, and all throughout the world. Jews had communities, and they flourished for 2,000 years. We lived in these communities. So all of a sudden, they're coming along and saying, "Hey, we have to have a Jewish home." The ones that were prior to them, their grandfathers of Zionism, and the rabbis who were in the generations all the way back to the temple, these were great holy men, scholars. Nobody said, "Hey, we have to have a home." Why? Because not only we don't have to, but it's forbidden for us to have this home. God wants us to be amongst the nations as friends, as and living together with people, with the communities that are there, loyal citizens. It's our teaching that we have to be loyal citizens and pray for the well-being of every country we reside. And I always show this picture. We live together in harmony in Palestine, in every Muslim land, as we do it. So yes, there were occasions where we were murdered and so forth. But the solution to that is we believe, we turn to God, and we be introspective. Why did this terrible decree come against Jews? Just like we look why God sent us a tsunami, an earthquake, a plague. God forbid. All these things, we have to be introspective and understand why God brought us about. If we can, we understand it. We try to see how to better ourselves. But we never say that the solution of a tsunami is to rebel against God or something, like it said in the Towers of Babel, that they wanted to build a tower and fight God. That's not the solution. Or in this case, they're going to make a state, fight God by saying we're going to leave exile. God says don't leave exile, and it will bring catastrophe. That's what God warns us in the Torah. So they said, no, our solution to the suffering that there's a pogrom, that there was Hitler, or whatever it may be, is that we're going to reconstruct and make a Jewish state. That's not the solution. Do you want to do that? At least don't call it a Jewish state. Why are you using the name of Judaism that totally rejects this concept and claiming it in the name of the religion, which is a farce, which is a hypocrisy, which is false.
So you're saying the Jewish people would have been perfectly happy breaking off into small communities and finding their place in the world. They didn't need this entire piece of land to call home.
100%. The world is very large. We were living, in fact, my father, as I mentioned at the beginning, and my father-in-law, and very many communities moved to the United States. The United States could take thousands of times the amount of Jewish people living here, and still they wouldn't notice a difference in the United States itself. And then there's Canada and England, and we'll go on and on and on. We have beautiful communities in England, in Canada and England, and they're anti-Zionist, by the way. How many Jews moved to the state of Israel? How many Jews? 6 million you have altogether now. That's not what moved there then. But there was a couple of 100,000. Today, they became more. But so who says that that's the solution? In fact, I mean, again, I'm reluctant to talk about pure logic that every child would understand. But let's just talk about this logic for a second. Yeah. So they're making this. They're going to make their safe haven surrounded by every country that says we don't want you, and that's going to be concentrate the Jews there. And then they complain that Iran and the other countries have bombs, and they could, God forbid, bomb them. Right. And that's the safe haven. That's our insurance policy. God help us. Sure, that's the logical part. But we say it's against God because the Torah warns us: do not kill, do not steal, do not oppress, and do not make a land.
I'm presuming your father was offered to go to Israel then? Am I right in saying that?
I don't. He escaped to Italy from Hungary and came to the United States. He had 3 brothers who came also came. They're all passed on, whatever they came. He had, the rest is some of his sisters were killed and so forth. But he came. He was able to. One sister was shot and killed, and the rest of the family, or anyway, whatever. But he came. He was the youngest of 10 children. He came with a few, 2-3 brothers. They came to the here. Then one. Whatever. So the family issues are not into one came later, but they came to the United States through Italy. So I don't know if he ever even contemplated.
But that's what I'm trying to get at, is because obviously if you're told.
But others, like we had Rabbi Beck, who was very famous, one of our teachers, and used to go on all demonstrations, and his pictures here show a picture of him.
I've seen him. I've seen Sir.
You've seen him, Rabbi Beck. His son is in London, one of the leaders today. Rabbi Beck, his father was Moshe Dovid, Moshe Ber Beck of blessed memory, and he was a child. He was in the bunkers, hiding from the Nazis in Hungary and Budapest. And then when they were freed, then he was, I think, like a refugee camp for a little time in Italy. I don't know why Italy became a center. And then the Zionists did. They tried to manipulate that other countries should not take in the Jews, and so many Jews were like sort of almost forcibly led to Palestine. He went to Palestine with his brother, and he studied in a school there, a very religious school, and he and very anti-Zionist. And he was very anti-Zionist and went to the very anti-Zionist community and grew to be one of the greatest leaders against Zionism. But yes, Zionism manipulated people to go there to use as cannon fodder, basically, to fight their wars.
Okay. So when I speak to a lot of Jewish people, they tend to tell me that the land of Palestine is holy to them and it's always belonged to them. What is your stance on that?
It is a holy land. We call it the Holy Land.
Okay.
It is holy by us. We believe that it's God is over in the whole world, all over. But this is considered holy because God considers it more holy. Therefore, whatever these spiritual meanings are, it's beyond me, but it has a holiness. In fact, rabbis through the ages, they would retire, or people, and they would live off their lives. The last years of they would go and retire to the Holy Land. Now, so in other words, because according to the decree of exile, as individuals, we are allowed to live there. But as a nation, or to create, to have our own sovereignty or anything of that form, that's forbidden. Or to go en masse, we're not allowed to. That's why we never did. But as individuals, we always lived there. And it was, in fact, the Ivy League of Jews living in the Holy Land. So,
but if there's an Ivy League of Jews, then surely other Jewish people would want to go to that Ivy League then.
Well, you are right, but we consider it in such a holy place that, first of all, if it would be, hypothetically speaking, if a whole mass of Jews would go, then the rabbis would convene and have to say that it's, usually they would say it's not permitted to go as a large group. It never happened that way because actually the Jewish people know, the ones who are pious, practicing the religion, know that to go there is not such a simple issue. Because you have to be in a very high level of holiness to live in that land. It's not simple. It's not made for just a plain person who wants to live his daily materialistic type of life. So people were very careful before they went there. And some people wanted to go, and they would go to their rabbis and they would tell them, they would discourage them from that, and they would say, you shouldn't be doing this because, like I said, it's really, we consider it not just a simple piece of land. It's not a piece of real estate, so that's how they went there. That's why, but this community, just that didn't go through the years, developed into, like I say, a very elite community, and they were therefore very opposed to Zionism. And in fact, we have the leaders of the community there, and so anybody can follow the history of those that were living there. By Sonnenfeld, of blessed memory, he met with the king of Transjordan in the 1920s, right, and expressly told them that he opposes this Zionist movement that had started already, the 1890s and so forth. They started trickling up to Palestine. And he said, this is not us. We don't aspire to take over the Temple Mount, the Al-Aqsa area, Al-Aqsa Mosque. And they even put letters in Arabic that they had written for the Arab League and in Arab newspapers, and that is saying we as Jews oppose this. When he passed on, I'll give you an example of the chief rabbi, and again, not to be confused with Israel's making a rabbinate and their chief rabbi, which is again window dressing. It's a farce. It's just like the state is a farce. The chief rabbi and rabbinate is just a con job. It's really a farce. We don't look at it as anything. We had a rabbinate, the heads of the Jewish community. And when this Rabbi Sonnenfeld passed on, the next was Rabbi Wyszynski, who took over. And he pleaded with the United Nations. In 1947, the United Nations sent a delegation to inquire about creating this so-called Jewish state. And he said, we furthermore, this is documents of the United Nations, that we furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine. Imagine that. This very religious rabbi said, we don't want a Jewish state. And this is a declaration before the United Nations in 1947, July 16, 1947. So basically, the Jewish community as a whole, they said, yes, we consider it a holy land, but it's forbidden for us to come and to try to take control of that. That is why actually Jews lived in Palestine, lived in every Arab and Muslim countries, in peace and tranquility as a flourishes, because the Muslim people, even though they knew our religion, they know exactly what it says in our books. It's not a secret, but they knew that we're not aspiring or attempting to take over the land because it's forbidden for us. So we're not a threat. Yes, we have a different religion. We have a different end day narrative. We say that the Messiah is going to come from the house of David. God will rebuild the temple. And so, and there will be a Jewish kingdom, but the Jewish kingdom will be somebody who's a pious man serving God to lead the Jewish people. But all the nations will be together. It says the all the nations will make one bond to do the will of the Almighty, and that's what we pray and yearn for. Anything else out of that is totally not Jewish. So they never thought even there will come a group of people who will come and want to establish a state. And the Zionists were totally out of left field. They came from Austria. They came along. The Jewish community in Palestine opposed them from day one. And we had our demonstrations from day one. Until today, this is a picture of that they have a mandatory service in the IDF, Israeli Defense Force, and every boy and girl from our communities who turns 17 becomes a criminal because we refuse to serve. Here you see a girl behind bars.
Right.
Psychologically, they try to break up because they put on the army clothes, and she's carrying a prayer book and crying. This is what happens to our people. They're all criminals when they turn 17. But here you see beating of Jewish children, old men, Jewish children who are all demonstrating for over 75 years. They demonstrate, they get brutally beaten by their soldiers. If this would happen in England or in the United States and anywhere in the world, it would be the greatest scandal. And Netanyahu would be on a plane demanding restitution. That's what he would be doing, and claiming anti-Semitism. Look what they're doing. This is brutally beating when none of us are carrying arms. They trample them with their horses. They drive into them with cars. I mean, I could go on. We have tens of thousands of pictures of this. Is what's happening constantly from day one. Here they spray them with chemical spray, that to destroy their clothing, stink spray, it's called, or something, to destroy, to discourage demonstrations because they don't have money for so much clothes. And the picture is in the streets of Jews. Stop Zionist terrorist massacre in Gaza. This is in the streets of Jerusalem, Mea Shearim. Here you see they have a Palestinian flag on top of the building. So the Jewish community has a narrative, the very religious community. We are anti-Zionist, anti the existence of the state. We have been and will always be. That you're asking about our relation to the land. Yes, it's a holy land. Yes, we yearn to return. But the Zionists are using this yearning and of being, what is that yearning? To be close to God, our lives are to sanctify God by doing the right things. And the pinnacle of this will be when God will make this metaphysical change. Will all humanity recognize one God and bring us back? God will build the temple. But that doesn't mean an establishment of a state of this national materialistic democracy. So this is just a rebellion against God. We don't want this. We don't want to personally establish a state. When God will make this miraculous change, where atheists will stop being atheists, that's what we're talking about. So they use this yearning to establish a state, this false interpretation of this, and conning the world. And like right now in Gaza, the terrible, while we're standing here and sitting comfortably and talking, there are people in excruciating pain, lying on the floors in the corridors in the hospitals where they don't have anesthesia. They're suffering beyond words. And we should just be tears flowing from our eyes while we're talking constantly. This is what's happening in Gaza. Why? Because the world accepts the narrative of Zionism that they're representing God and Judaism, and that the ones who are opposing them are anti-Semitic and evil. They vilify these good people, these beautiful people of Palestine, and therefore they're given the free pass to bomb relentlessly and kill. And it's beyond comprehension what's happening every minute in Gaza now. We cry with them as Jewish people around the world.
What do you say to the notion that it is self-defense from what Hamas did? Surely when that happened, how did you first feel when that happened when Hamas did what they did on October the 7th?
Well, we said from day one, this is a link in a long chain. This is not something happened all of a sudden, a change in the world. A terrible 1,400 people died. So we step back and we say, our rabbis said from day one, by rebelling against God, it says in the Torah, it will bring to a catastrophe. And 75 years and more, they were killing Palestinians. 75 years and more, they were beating and assassinating rabbis, Jews. 75 years and more, their own people were dying in order for them to complete their establishment, to solidify their state. And through that 75 years and more, Jews were standing there and pleading with the world, with the United Nations, and saying it's not Judaism, it's unacceptable. Pleading and standing and demonstrating against the Zionists in the street and saying, you are the cause of bloodshed. I still hear ringing in my ears the Rabbi Teitelbaum, who was the next chief rabbi after Rabbi Dushinsky. There was another chief rabbi whose name was Rabbi Yoel Teitelbaum of blessed memory, and he moved out of Jerusalem still as chief rabbi, moved to New York and established a beautiful, large community he has in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which still today, it's right across Manhattan. It's the largest concentration of religious Jews, and there's not one Israeli flag there. Not one Israeli flag. It's tens of thousands of Jews. And he kept on urging people to leave that shouldn't be under the Zionist control. And he hear was banging on the table and he's crying when he gives a speech, and he says, who knows how much bloodshed this state of Israel will bring. The death of not only the Palestinian people, there's tens of thousands, it's beyond words, but the Jewish people are dying because their selfish, flawed, political concept of trying to bang a square into a circle. It doesn't fit. It doesn't belong. We are living as a beautiful fabric of Jews and non-Jews. We're living together in the Holy Land, babysitting each other's children, and living with a distinctly different religion in the same courtyards without any United Nations or human rights respect. Zionism came. So when we saw these 1,400 people were murdered, we cried. We're not condoning death. We hurts. We say, but why? Why did this happen? So they keep on saying, oh, Hamas. And they start banging on the table and insisting they're going to wipe them out, Hamas. And we say, we don't plead with them because these are corrupt, evil. These are, this is a corrupt group of people. They're criminals. But we're talking to the world and saying, how much longer are you going to go lockstep with these Zionists? Shake your head and say, yes, you're the heads of Judaism. We give you the respect, leaders of Judaism, and you're doing God's will. And if you say we have to kill, that's the solution to kill. When you saw 75 years, there was the Intifada, second Intifada, there was suicide bombers. We're not condoning these violence because, good people died, pure souls were killed. But why is this happening? Blood is pouring from Palestinians and from Jews. And why? Because there's a flawed movement. Till Zionism came 100-odd years ago, we were living for hundreds of years without any suicide bombers, without any... and now you have 1,400 people died. Isn't it enough? Why shouldn't the world step back and say, okay, we played your game enough. We played by your rules. Now we see it's impossible to go further. They are insulting the intelligence, the basic logic and intelligence that given to God, given to every human being, they're insulting us. The world they are insulting. How could the world go in lockstep and say, yes, so you can bomb? Even that narrative that they're going to bomb Hamas doesn't make sense, because it's the government of the people that were living there for many years now. So in other words, they're given free play to bomb medical centers, social service units, everything that's of a government. What does that make sense? And they're doing it with impunity. They've killed more than 3,000 children who are obviously are not Hamas. What does that mean? And they're given the right to do that. To go in, they're debating if you should go in, not go in, go in. They are going in, but bombing, that's because they say they bombed now in the West Bank. They just bombed. And they say, well, because and they bombed I forget which center they bombed was clearly a center of civilians, and they say, well, we killed some Hamas leader, and that justifies killing tens and tens of people.
What about this notion of they're using people as human shields, therefore these people cannot, they're trapped in themselves, and it's kind of this term that's being thrown around, collateral damage?
So I'm asking you, if somebody takes a person, God forbid, in every country, you're living in England, if in England, in London, will go into a home and into a school and grab all the kids in the school and say, I'm here, and thumb his nose at the people who's here. So now it's going to give them carte blanche to be able to bomb the school, because is that the way it works? I'm asking you. It's against international law, but I'm reluctant to get international because there's many people who are already speaking the words that I'm speaking.
Sure.
We're talking from Judaism. It's a rebellion against God, against the basics of Judaism. We say because we are Jews, we object with all the powers we have to what they're doing. They're not Judaism. They're the devil. They're the Satan. We said you just want to start by when they created the state. So it was ratified by the United Nations. The United Nations was that time created just to bring peace to the world. And yet they ratified that the minority group of a land should be able to label the land under their religion, a Jewish state, so-called, the state of Israel, having control over the majority of Muslims. Does that make sense? That's asking for trouble. And so we say it's only the works of the Satan. What they're doing now is the works of the Satan. This is not, it's incomprehensible, it's unjust, but it's like I say, it defies logic, and it insults the intelligence of humanity that they're able to support such a concept, because even if they would say that it's Hamas, again, we're not condoning the violence, but it's purely because of their occupation. The only real solution is to remove the agitator, the cause of bloodshed, even if they will murder every Hamas. But I'm asking you, what happens to every family? You have 2.2 or 3 million people living in Gaza. Now, every person leaves over relatives. What will those relatives do when they grow up? In their heart, what is going to be built for them? So it won't be called Hamas, they'll be called some other name. It's not ridiculous.
But the hatred will be in their heart, you're
tragic.
saying. Yeah.
It's tragic what they're doing. It's inhumane. It's ungodly. That's what we say. They are anti-Semitism personified. Not only are they killing Palestinians, but they are creating a newer level of anti-Semitism that never was. They are exacerbating anti-Semitism, and they are with their hands. Basically, Jews are dying. 1,400 people died. Thank you, State of Israel. That's what the answer is. So we how dare we buy into the narrative, even giving them the mouthpiece to be able to talk about Hamas when they saw 75 years till today what's going to happen and what's happening, and yet the 1,400 people, they should be now resigning. The state should end because of this terrible tragedy. Now, so they're talking about Hamas. In other words, they're going to rehash their old game. It's impossible. It's unacceptable. It's against Judaism. Killing is and taking the land is against the Torah, against my Jewish. It's not Judaism, and it's not the will of the Jewish people who are true to the Torah around the world. As I was showing you, we have tens of thousands of people. We have large communities. Not everybody demonstrates. You know why not everybody demonstrates?
Why?
Because we are viciously attacked around the world and threatened. Our lives are threatened. I went to a demonstration last week. They slashed the tires of my car. We were parked blocks away, but they saw it. They arrested it. My brothers who are demonstrating in Palestine in the streets of Al-Quds in Jerusalem, they broke into the houses in the middle of the night. They had peaceful demonstration. They arrested them. They broke up the house. They went into the synagogues and they broke it up. This is what they're doing. We have here is in front of the White House when Netanyahu came to visit the president, tens of thousands of people, but it never gets shown by the media. You know why? Because the media gets labeled as anti-Semitic. So everybody's afraid to talk. Many Jews are afraid to stand up and speak up, but we cry and hurt invariably. The more the religious the Jewish community, the more anti-Zionist, because Zionism and Judaism are diametric opposites, incompatible. They're just using them our name.
I understand. Can I ask if you had to put a percentage on how many rabbis are anti-Zionist and how many that are? Where would you guesstimate that, just so I can try and get my bearings?
Right. Look, we have communities that are hundreds of thousands of Jews. We have the communities around the world. The way to judge this is invariably, the more the religious the community, the more anti-Zionist. If you will go in London to Stamford Hills,
yes,
you'll see there's not Israeli flags. You're not going to see a march, a parade like they have on Fifth Avenue in New York, Independence Day parade for Israel. If there is, there is, but you will find you won't see the people dressed, religious communities coming out. Why? Because when I say religious, I mean truly religious. I don't mean what they call modern Orthodox. That means a euphemism for the religious. They keep the Sabbath, but they make compromises. Women sing. They don't dress modestly. They don't cover their hair. They don't have all different types. Their religion is compromised. That's why they become Zionist. Because if the religion is compromised, then you can buy into anything that's convenient. But the very religious communities are anti-Zionist around the world, whether it's in Jerusalem, of course, where the center of the opposition to Zionism started when the Zionists came, in Mea Shearim and Beit Shemesh, all these different communities, or you come to New York, the second largest Jewish concentration of religious Jews, right across from Manhattan, where I see there's not one Israeli flag. In Montreal, Canada, you go wherever there's a very religious. The less the religious, the more tendencies are to Zionism. Sometimes they get ensnared because of fear-mongering. The Zionists tell the Jews, hey, they're like the Nazis. They want to kill every Jew, and they keep on hammering this home with their power of press. So people are afraid sometimes to relinquish what they have there. So there's some people that support them, not because they're Zionists, that they want the state, but they feel they're afraid if they'll be slaughtered. It's a Zionist vicious narrative. There's other issues.
But what's the ratio, sir? What would you guess? I'm just trying to get...
In numbers.
If you just had to guess. 20%,
yes.
30%.
There are more Zionists amongst what they call Jewish. There are many more Zionists than anti-Zionists because there are more people who don't keep the Ten Commandments, don't keep the Sabbath. The non-religious, the older generation, a lot of them bought into Zionist propaganda that that the Zionists are connected, that the Palestinians are connected with Hitler. And they just saw how 6 million Jews died, so they use fear-mongering and fear and that the state of Israel is to protect them because the Palestinians want to kill them and things like that. So they use fear. The younger generation, mind you, in universities, you're seeing a lot of people who, although it hurts us, they're not doing it from the religious point, but they see the inhumanity, that it's false, that it's not Judaism, and that's not true, the whole narrative. So you're having a lot of Jews who are coming out today and demonstrating and speaking up, and who don't come from the religious point, but they say Judaism means something to them. It means to serve God and not to occupy. But the religious, again, the numbers, it's very hard to say because many of the religious communities are afraid to speak up, but they're not Zionists, as I say. You can see they never celebrate the state of Israel. And then there's the communities that go out and demonstrate against the state of Israel. Which is the very, very religious, who go out and demonstrate, whether it's in the United States or in Jerusalem. In England, many times they wanted to go out and demonstrate, and they were threatened with their lives. Still they go. There's a small communities that go out, but not the very large, even though they're anti-Zionist.
I think what I'm trying to get at is if the youth go to synagogues and listen to their elders, and you're saying, obviously, if you're highly religious, then you are anti-Zionist. Then I'm just curious as to why that's not filtering down, if that makes sense, to the youth.
To the Jewish the communities, it is filtering down because we have a distinctly different school system from the very religious and the what they call modern religious.
Right.
But the very religious around the world, it filters down. I mean, we have many books. We have
in Jewish schools, it's anti-Zionist teachings.
In the very religious, certainly, we have put out books. The rabbis speak out, which shows every type of Jewish. There were Lithuanian Jews, Hasidic Jews, Sephardic Jews. It goes automatically because the religion is really contradictory to Zionism. So that you will find. Again, how many people will be outspoken? That's a different category because the chief rabbi of Palestine, who I mentioned, who moved to New York, he used to plead with his followers that they should go out, and they would go out. We would lose our jobs if every demonstration Jews would do this, because the Zionists unabashedly come in your face. They go around videoing, taking pictures of every Jew who's there. They sit down and they try to see every Jew who it is. They find out where he works. They go to the company where he's working and say, you have an anti-Semitic Jew, self-hating Jew, and we're going to stop advertising. They have all different systems of discouraging. They're making Jews should not go out and demonstrate. But there is tens of thousands who do go out demonstrate. So we have that also. But it's depending, so it's not a black and white concept.
Yeah. It's interesting you use the paradox anti-Semitic Jew. It's almost like those two can't be.
Yeah. So well, they would call it self-hating Jew, or they're like like I say, they try to really disparage and disqualify and call them fringe Jews. Fanatic Jews, ultra-Orthodox, they use different, ultra-Orthodox is like sort of used a psychological almost thing to disqualify as being a representative of Judaism. But they use even worse words. They call them fanatics or or like self-hating Jews, or they have other terminology for these type of Jews. It's confusing, I know, it's hard for me to explain.
No, it's fine, sir, it's fine. You're doing a great job. I'm grasping the concept, definitely. Can I just say, so are you in fear of your own safety then? Because you're very vocal.
We look to God for our safety. If this would just be for a hobby, what I'm doing, or just for fun, or whatever you would say, I would never do it, because we know who we're dealing with. We look at Zionists as murderers. We look at them. We know what they're doing. We know we don't trust them. They murdered our rabbis. We have people in the 1920s that they murdered. We have the chief rabbi I mentioned one chief rabbi who was Rabbi Sonnenfeld in the 1920s, and I think there was Rabbi Dushinsky later in 1947. But one of the chief rabbis in Jerusalem, his name was Rabbi Chazan of blessed memory. He was from the Sephardic community. That was from Middle Eastern, not European countries. And he went out when the Zionists had that war in 1948. He went, the Jewish community living in the old city, who were living together with the Arab neighbors. And when the Zionists started coming up and fighting the Jordanian army, he went up with his community and he said, we're going to give our community to the Jordanians. He went out with a white flag. This picture, you see a flag, but you don't see the top of it. It's the white flag. And he went out to the Jordanian army and he said, so they shot him. They shot at him. He was shot with a bullet in his foot. And they warned they're going to kill them. And they did kill our rabbis. In the 1924, we had maybe the first martyr, famous martyr, was somebody, Dr. Dahan. Dr. Yaakov Yisrael Dahan, Hashem should avenge his blood, God should avenge his blood. He went out and he was a friend of the King of Denmark. There's a statue of him in Denmark. He was very close with him. He was a diplomat. He was a scholar. He was a brilliant man. He was, but not religious. He became religious, and he decided to become religious. He felt must be to join the Zionists. Like they try to always bring that. So he decided to go to Palestine. He went to Palestine. He knew many languages, and the Zionists embraced him. And they thought they had a real boon here. They had this very famous diplomat, but it didn't take him long to realize, because he was searching for the truth, that the very religious community, being led by Rabbi Sonnenfeld of blessed memory, is anti-Zionism. It took him a few very short time, and he became a representative of the anti-Zionist community. And he said, in the 1920s, he said, I'm going to go to Parliament, and I'm going to let them know that what they're doing is wrong, that the Jewish community doesn't want to be led by the Zionists. Because Britain put out a decree or something that that every religion, the people have to register under their leadership, and the Jews have to register under the Zionists. This was when so he saved them from that. He was able to stop that, but he also he said, I'm going to go to Parliament and bring the case of the Jews to the British Parliament. This is unacceptable. So the Zionists told them, we're going to kill you, we're going to assassinate, and they shot him cold-bloodedly. Haganah, that's what's today the IDF, shot him in front of Shaare Zedek Hospital. They're proud of it, and they murdered him, 1924. And so this is just one more of, like I say, Jews were constantly being murdered. So people are afraid to be outspoken against Zionism, but we are there, and we have very, large, strong communities we have our insulated communities, our own school systems, our own, and our children grow up very strongly anti-Zionist. All our families were almost entirely wiped out. I remember when I grew up, I was born 11 years after the Second World War. So, and when I grew up, this community was quite small. These were all immigrants. But thank God we don't have family planning, so we have maybe seven kids. We have as many children as God blesses one with. So our communities grows by leaps and bounds. It should continue growing in great numbers. God should help, and they grow up all anti-Zionists. And my children, thank God, are married. They're anti-Zionists. My eldest son is also a rabbi, and the rest of them, two of them actually, one is a rabbi, a pope, a rabbi, they're all anti-Zionists, and they have children. We have tens of thousands just from the community itself and they're having so every year we have to open schools upon schools, because we send to separate boys and girls schools. We have religious schools. That is saying both in Jerusalem and around the world, in Europe, and in the United States. These are all anti-Zionists. It's one of the basics of our teachings that we oppose the state of Israel. And the Zionists are fearful of this because they know that the numbers keep on growing in Jerusalem, and they're going to be outnumbered by this community and the Arabs together.
Are these schools targeted by them at all, do you feel? Or?
Yes, they are. Certainly we're targeted. Our communities are targeted.
By the Zionists.
Yes. Well, our schools per se in the United States and so forth, they don't openly come and attack our schools. They'll be careful about that. Individuals who are very outspoken, they attack and threaten our lives and the lives of our children. God should protect us. But the school systems, they try to a lot of times get the government to shut us down in certain manners, and they're under their control in occupied Palestine and Jerusalem and so forth. They attack them viciously. We don't take funding from them, by the way. We have special called Keren Hatzoah, a fund that we go for charities around the world to support the schools that refuse to take funding from the Israeli government. And we have many of those. Thank God, and they keep on growing. Like I say, the Zionists don't know what to do because the Arab community also is growing in leaps and bounds, and the Jewish community. So they know they're going to, down the road, statistically, they're going to be outnumbered even. So the whole Zionist plan is full of holes that are not just a little hole, but they're big enough that it will swallow the whole Zionist state, and they know that. Just not by number, by sheer number. Some people say that's why Sharon gave up Gaza, because he didn't want so many people. They're going to outnumber them and outvote them, and then he's going to have a real problem. That's just one example of that.
It's very, very fascinating that, because from my point of view, I didn't know there was such an internal battle amongst Jewish people in this. So it's very interesting. Have you ever been to Israel, sir?
Yes, actually, after I finished my grade schools, or whatever you would call, so I was tested for a rabbinical college, and I was supposed to go to Jerusalem. It was a very elite school, but I went there. I was a little young. I had graduated, skipped 2 grades, or whatever it may be. So I went quite young. So when I went there, I got very scared because it was an old Jerusalem school with people dressed in the old Jerusalem garb, and it was very run down. I went into the courtyard. I took one look around, and I turned around, and I went to a relative. And I said, I was young, and I
Right.
went by myself. So I didn't remain there. I was supposed to study an anti-Zionist rabbinical school. So I came out of there, and I went back home, and I studied in rabbinical colleges in New York and London. I studied a year, as I say, rabbinical college. One of the great teachers, my teachers in the rabbinical college were some of the greatest leaders amongst our Jewish, what we consider.
But wouldn't an anti-Zionist avoid Israel for that very reason, that they feel like this is the Zionist homeland?
That is true. The chief rabbi, as I say, of Palestine himself moved to New York and established great schools, and he urged people to follow. At the same time, there were other rabbis, and he himself had schools who are still in Jerusalem that are under his name, under Rabbi Teitelbaum's name of blessed memory, because not everybody could leave. And around the world, there were not everybody who took his opinion at the time. There were some rabbis, first of all, that are living in Jerusalem and were living at the time, and they said, we should not forsake the land. If we're going to leave in large numbers, the Zionists will take control over the land, and we have to fight them from within. So there was a difference of opinion of whether they should leave. Now, there were others, many who would love to leave, and we have actually organizations that attempt to help people who try to leave. But every individual who tries to leave is a struggle, a big struggle, and a fortune of money. Why? Because in the United States or in England or in Canada, they do not take citizens that easily. They don't give visas that easily.
That's right. I've heard. I've heard that any Jewish person can go to Israel at any point and call it home. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what I believe. Because they want cannon fodder. But to go to another country, and remember, we can't just move to I don't know, to
Australia,
somewhere in the middle of nowhere, because we have to have we're bound by to have a Jewish schooling for our children, kosher food and everything. So we can't just simply pick ourselves up and leave. So we try. Jews keep on attempting to leave, and every individual case is a whole struggle to get them, especially if they have a family, to get them to be able to live in the United States or in England, and it's really a fight. And I must tell you that I even went to court to attest to people in the United States and different places that on humanitarian reasons that they're being oppressed by the Zionists. But it's a very it's a political because they don't like that they should be able to say that they are letting a Jew from Israel because the Israelis are anti-Semitic. So it's very hard. Anyway, so there's many people who leave. Thousands and thousands of people keep on leaving, and you're right. But there are many people who feel that just studying there in the Ivy League schools is not supporting Israel. Now, as I am today, and many years, because I follow very closely the chief rabbi of Palestine, Rabbi Teitelbaum of blessed memory, I would not go there because we consider it, tens and tens of thousands of Jews won't go there, even on visiting, because on principle, we feel, the rabbi used to say, Rabbi Teitelbaum, that when you go there, you don't know how you're giving support to them just by being there and so forth. So I agree with you that we feel by going there, we are giving them support. So a lot of people don't go there. Today, I would not go there because of this opinion. But when I was a youth of that age, 17 or whatever it may be, and my father at that time, blessed memory, I suppose he didn't hear it from the local synagogue where he went. The rabbi didn't tell him that he should not send us there. So, as I say, it was a very God-fearing school and so forth, and they're anti-Zionist. But anyways, I ended up not studying there, and that's my history.
So, are you aware visually how it looks, Orthodox Jew? Because typically in the past, when we go to marches or we see marches and protests, it tends to be from kind of one type of person per se. But this time around, I'm seeing a lot more people of different colors and faiths showing their support. I mean, are you aware of the work that you're doing is having a profound effect?
Well, you're asking if we're having a profound effect. You mean on Jews
on just people just vocalizing and really understanding what's happening, and it's no longer like listening to just one side of the media. People are now taking a more nuanced approach. They're really understanding and trying to understand this story from the past. I mean, when I try to explain it to people, I say, look, when you can't watch a boxing match from round 9 and just talk about who's winning or losing or what's happening. You have to see it from the kind of ring walk to the whole thing. So I think what I'm trying to say is, are you aware of the impact of the kind of change of what you're seeing?
Yes. I, as very religious Jews, I personally am not on the internet.
Okay, yes, sorry.
So I can only see with what I see with my eyes, more or less. We have internet, we have filter because we're able to promulgate, to speak our message on Zoom and so forth. So it happens to be I do this in an office, and we have a filter that it should be because of immorality issues. And I personally we don't have, as a general rule, we don't have smartphones. If it is, it's filtered. So I don't really see exactly what's happening around the world, but I see with my own eyes the demonstrations and the difference, thousandfold. People, maybe thousandfold is an exaggeration.
No,
but
you could be right.
Of going out, it's unbelievable the amount of people that are coming out and outspoken, and still yet they are being attacked by the Zionists, who are trying to still carry the mic and tell the world that these are anti-Semites. But it doesn't seem to be carrying the same weight. So it seems that it's affecting the world. We, as religious Jews, are told by the Almighty, we are now commanded that when God's name is being desecrated, it's being sullied, we are required to go out and speak up. In the name of God, they're doing their actions, occupying, killing, stealing, oppressing. In the name of God, they say they represent the religion Judaism, this democracy that's not a democracy, and that you don't have to be bound by the Torah. They're all speaking this name of God proudly in the world, and they have a chief rabbi and a rabbinate just to give it more legitimacy. And so we were told we have to be outspoken because this is against God. They are killing and stealing in our name. And people give them the support because that they're able to do what they're doing to the people in Gaza and Palestine in our name. So we are required by God. We say this NAKBA, this tragedy, this terrible, what's happening there is for the Palestinian people a NAKBA, and for the world it's a NAKBA. For us it's a double NAKBA because it's being done in our name. So we go out there. We feel it's required. Our rabbis told us to go out regardless if the prime minister would be a peace lover and say that he wants some type of concessions to the Palestinian people. For instance, when they said a two-state solution, we had rabbis who went to Oslo, where the Oslo Accords were made. I went to Washington, D.C. at the time. This is 30 years ago, and we went there and we stood and held up the same signs. We stood up and we said, you should just know that we as Jews will never accept this ersatz Judaism. We will never accept control that Jews could call in the name of Judaism. They should have control over any part of Palestine, even 1 inch, because God tells us we are forbidden to occupy, to steal even 1 inch, or to have even a Jewish town. So we went up when it looked that it would be a peaceful type of thing. We said, no, it's against God. And in the truth, it says it will. If you rebel against God, it won't be peace. It will not be with peace. So we said, at the end of the day, we're not naysayers, but this is not going a peaceful occupation, and it's against God either way. But so we, regardless of how it looks or what the situation is, we were always demonstrating. We will not change with God's help and stop demonstrating, even when God's help. They should today make a ceasefire and stop what they're doing, and even send in medical aid, which God should help, they should send in. Even all that, we would not stop. So there is a change. It looks like there's a change, but this does not change our constantly feeling the obligation and going out and speaking up against it.
Okay, can I just say from my point of view, from what I'm seeing, is a definite change. More people from vast different backgrounds appear to understand this more and really are out there protesting. And I will say, when I see Orthodox Jews like yourself protesting, it has an amazing effect, and it shows people that, hold on, Jewish people are not all the same. So I just wanted to relay that to you, sir. You mentioned the word NAKBA a few times. Now, I've heard this word recently. Could you just clarify what that means? Because I'd rather it came from you as a man of knowledge, please, sir.
It's an Arabic word which I'm not very proficient in, but it means a catastrophe. It means their catastrophe.
Because they refer to a NAKBA that happened before, and I think some Jewish people were saying to me that it didn't happen. What's your understanding of this? If you could just shine some light on it.
Well, the NAKBA started by the creation of the state, and well before actually, because like I say, insidiously they started taking over the land slowly by buying property in them, and didn't accept that. There was there was massacres and killing in different Arab towns and cities. So that was what's called the NAKBA. The name, the name over the whole concept of the occupation in the state of Israel, they call the NAKBA. Some people today say it's the second NAKBA. What they mean to say, it's just it's another link in this NAKBA, because it's not anything new. Just it's more of a shock now, because people who are looking at the history of the state and Zionism, they want to say that this is like the worst tragedy and horrific attack since the beginning of the state of Israel. Both the what's happening in Gaza and the bombing, which is relentless and inhumane, and also just happens to be, they want to say, as far as the killing of the Jews that were who are many of them Zionists, who were killed by the Palestinians that went out and killed them. They want to also, they claim that it's the worst that happened to them since the beginning of the state. Now, I'm not even so sure. I must tell you that the Zionists always try to hide how many people got killed in their wars. If you will go to their cemeteries, you can see pictures. You see thousands of graves of their soldiers. So who knows if they were only better able to cover up their losses. But whatever it is, we're not condoning the bloodshed, the attacks. We're saying that this is a pure action brings the action. This is what happens when you oppress a people, and by doing keep on repeating the same thing over. When they're going to be left, if they're given the free hand to continue what they're doing, and even what was doing to now, what can be the result? What will happen with the children and the relatives and all these people who see this was done to them? And they go around saying, here in the United States, they're running around, and the police and the governor here in New York, and they all making speeches that we were going to be diligent, that there shouldn't be anti-Semitic attacks, that the anti-Semitic attacks rose 400%, they said, since this happened. What does that mean? And yet we should be silent and say, no, yeah, we're going to accept them to speak in our name, in the name of Judaism. We should be silent. I mean, it's corrupt, the support of Zionism.
I think I saw Netanyahu the other day saying that the book has told him to carry this on. Or I don't know if you saw that.
He goes to the United Nations. He goes to Congress. This person is running a state that's totally against God, against the religion. In his personal life, he is not, as far as I know, a religious person. Yet he always feels it obligatory and convenient, better said, to go to the United Nations and Congress and right away start speaking about God gave us the land 3,000 years ago. How dare you mention about God gave us the land when we earned the decree 2,000 years ago not to reestablish the land? How dare you speak about that when you brutally beat Jews and I could tell you a litany of crimes that they do against the Jewish people, that they try to undermine Judaism. They make
the camera stopped.
The camera stopped. One second. How dare they say that he speaks in the name of God when, for instance, they have archaeological digs officially from the government. We have Jews who are buried 3,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, and we have exact dates So for them, it's a boon to dig up these graves. So they go around digging up graves and studying the bones of Jews when it's, according to Jewish law, the body is sacred. You're not allowed to do that. But they don't care because they don't. So we have to have people who die. They go running into these, into the scoops, the spoons, the scoops of the tractors to stop them from digging, and the blood that rolls like that flows like rivers from Jews throughout the history fighting. They're digging up of graves. They make autopsies. It's forbidden for us to make autopsies. They go in, so when any person dies, and especially if they don't have a relative, then they go and they use their body for studying. They cut them up. We have special organizations that in the middle of the night we hear somebody passed on. They run to the hospital, wherever it may be, and stand guard that they shouldn't cut up the body. This is the Jewish state, they call. I could go on and on. They decide to make a swimming pool in the most sacred, the most religious Mea Sharim in that area, to make a Olympic center and a swimming pools, because they want to break the backbone of the Jewish religious. They're on and on and on. You can't go. We have the forced military service in their army, which is pure a house of prostitution and other things there, and so we don't want to go. I mean, besides, we won't go there even if it would be a rabbinical college. We wouldn't go there because it's against the Torah. We're not going to go to an army that fights God, but yet everybody becomes a criminal. Our children who are living there have problem to travel. They can't travel because if they're 17 or 18 and they go to the border with their passport. Some of them, many of them refuse to make an Israeli passport, by the way. But even if they have their identity, whatever it is, and they want to go out of the country, they can't because they're illegal. They refuse to go to the army. And I go on and on and on what we have with the state of Israel.
Okay, let's conclude. Can this be solved?
It will be solved. You know, we believe that there's a God. God is the one who rules every part of this world. Yes, he brings a plague, but he also brings life. Children are born and God breathes life into them. We don't understand how he rules the world. God is compassionate. And the Torah says, why will you rebel against me? It will not be successful. The state will end, just like every the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire. U.S. decided didn't allow religion. Overnight. South Africa, the apartheid ended. This will end. This is against God. We don't know when God will bring an end to it. We pray to God that with his compassion, he should make it speedily and peacefully, that it should stop. But it will end. And we urge everybody to pray to God that he should make this what people call inhumane, we say ungodly entity, that should end speedily and peacefully. At the same time, we urge everybody, do what is in your power. Stand up, plead with your representatives. Put pressure. Apartheid didn't end because the leaders of states, prime ministers or presidents somehow demanded that the state South Africa should end its apartheid. In fact, they went on the merry way. They were a member of the United Nations, and their ambassador, I always like to say, was referred to His Excellency, while the ones who stood up in opposition were called terrorists, Nelson Mandela and so forth. Yes. One day, the grassroots stood up. The grassroots put so much pressure that their representatives just were uncomfortable. They had no choice, and they stood up and said, enough is enough. And then it stopped. And today everybody sees. I mean, you have to be a demon to be able to say that apartheid is acceptable. Nobody does. And it's illogical, right? And it stopped only because of the pressure of the grassroots. We will stop this. So we plead with everybody, stand up, do whatever you can. Give the people food, bring them a food, knock on all the doors you can. Put in advertisements around the world that we're pleading with people of their personal narratives of how we lived. Every old Arab family, every old Jewish family can tell you stories of how we coexisted and helped each other. Write it, put it, and with pictures or not with pictures, whatever you have, put advertisements in newspapers where you can, that the world should be, who have been inculcated and with the Zionist propaganda, Zionist narrative that is an ingrained hate of religion. No, let them know that we're not against Jews. The people around us said we're not against Jews, and we live together in peace. And the only problem is the occupation. Clarify it for the world. Put advertisements around the world. You know that I've been pleading this for 30 years and more. Thank God. And I've told this, the rich nations of the Arab who are supporting the Palestinian people, I said, there's money. Why can't you, just like you go to the New York Times and all these newspapers and Zionists keep on writing false history and claiming that the Palestinians are evil, that the Muslims are evil, and they want to destroy. Instead of that, why can't you put in advertisements? We put in advertisements. They didn't want to print our advertisements. We had to fight them tooth and nail, and we put in once a year when they make the Independence Day parade. We put in advertisements against Zionists, but that's a pittance of what has to be done. So we plead with people. It's not too late. There's still a people of millions of people they're suffering. Let's every minute stand up and do what we can.
Can a two-state solution happen?
We don't. Well, we as a Jew, as I mentioned, by the Oslo Accord, we said we are very happy for every inch that's returned to the Palestinian people, but we will never support the concept of a so-called Jewish state because it's against God. Even 1 inch of occupation. I could tell you, I was in Calgary in Canada, and I was invited to, after I spoke in the university where the Zionists tried to get me eliminated, I shouldn't be able to speak there. It became a big issue with that. But then they invited me to a house that somebody wanted to attend, an old Arab, because it wasn't feeling well. They asked if I could go visit him. I went to visit him. He was very rich, had a big family, and he says, you see all of this? He says, it means nothing to me. I want to return to my house in Jerusalem. That's what he said. He had a family already, married children, big house and everything. He said, I'm not interested. I want, even if they make two states, that means they're occupying 1/2 of Palestine. That is unacceptable to the Palestinians, and to us Jews, we will never accept this Orthodox Judaism, a Judaism that calls itself a democracy, a Judaism that occupies and steals, a Judaism that says that we can rebel against God in any shape or form. So we will all stand here, and I tell you, will not be successful, even logically. Like I say, the people don't want that. And you see it's not working out. 75 years they attempted that. It's a joke. They keep on going on and on.
But obviously, the chances of Jewish people just turning around and leaving what is called Israel is slim to none. Surely,
well,
we're at that stage.
Leaving. When the world realizes that this is unattainable and unacceptable, evil, and it cannot be what they're doing to Palestinians, it's a totally crazy approach to having peace by stifling them. It's impossible. They will start and come to the realization that the approach is a free land. Just like South Africa, they had to stop apartheid. When that free land comes, I guarantee you, I've been, with God's help, to I was invited in Egypt, the Grand Mufti of Al-Azhar. I went to Al-Azhar. We met in Lebanon. We spoke for 170 countries that went gathered when the United States moved the embassy to Jerusalem. We were with the Shiites, the Sunnis, everybody. We were in Gaza. We had our representative and the PLO, and that was the leadership. Sorry, and then later. He was, by the way, the Zionists poured acid in his face. He was blinded in one eye.
Oh, really?
But then we went to Gaza. We met with them. We met with President Abbas. All of us are friendly to us. We went to every leaders, and they all said one thing: we are not against Jews. By the way, I don't share the view of this one or that one, whatever politically. We don't, like I say, we're not, President Abbas was pushing two-state. We're not part of that plan. But we wanted the world to see clearly that this has nothing to do with a Jewish or religious conflict between Muslims and Jews. We went to the leadership of Iran. I just met with the president of Iran in New York. We want the world to see that it has nothing to do with the difference of religion. And once that is, all these leaders at one, all of them in the same voice, they say one thing: we have no problem with living with Jews. They want to live in peace with Jews. We've had for hundreds of years. In their religion, in Islam, it's that they should respect Jews, and they all state that. So the issue is only this occupation. When the world will come to that realization, come to that senses, with respect, I don't want to insult the world, but when they come to this basic logic, then they will have a peaceful system of sonar coordinating that we should be able to live in peace. Yes, there will be people who have committed atrocities that they'll say they're uncomfortable living under a free Palestine, So America is big enough to take in those people, just like they took in other millions of people. So how many people are we talking about? 100,000, 200,000 who feel uncomfortable. They could, but the leadership of all the Palestinians, I met personally with the people of Gaza, the people of people who were after the Mavi Mamre, who was murdered. And the ones who were in hospitals, we went to Mavi Mamre, who tried to breach the blockade by Gaza. We met them in the hospital in Ankara. They embraced us, even though they were injured. We went to the hospitals in Gaza. We went to the orphanages in Gaza. All of them said, we are not against Jews. And it's under a leadership. The leaders will teach them. So it's that we say as a Jew, first of all, we're forbidden to have the state, no matter what, end of sentence. But we are telling you that it is clear that we can, just as history attests for hundreds of years, they will accept us. We can live together. If they would require that the Jews would leave, then who came in by afterward, whatever they require, we would have to leave. But it won't be that. That's a Zionist propaganda. It's their fear-mongering, their way of gaining support from the world. It's panic creating. It's like yelling fire in a theater. It's unacceptable. It's evil. If the world should only step out of this intimidation tactic of the propaganda of the powerful of the Zionists, you could see that inshallah, God help, we will have peace. And we as Jews will be able to show our gratitude for the Palestinians, give them freedom and support, and on God should help, we will be able to say, thank you for being our friends and somebody else, and we apologize for what is being done in our name. In the meantime, we cry with them and we plead with the world, have pity. This is inhumane, it's ungodly what's being done in Gaza.
I think that's beautiful words, sir. I think we can end there. It's amazing to have your time. I really appreciate you coming on. I think the work you're doing is amazing. It's really great to see, and all of the kind of protests that are happening around the world, from City Hall, even Liverpool Street Station, which is a big station here yesterday. People are turning out and voicing for peace, which is what I suppose anybody wants. Anyone that's human would want that. So I really thank you for your time, and I know you're saying that you don't see screens and stuff. I can safely and clearly say that you are making an impact, and you have been doing. So I would like to thank you for that, and thank you for your time, sir. It's been very, very eye-opening. I don't claim to know all. It's great to seek the information that you've given me and the knowledge. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Please see that it should be spread around the world, especially the people of Palestine. They should always be careful, call it not the Jewish state, the Jews, because then they fall into the trap of the Zionists that they can attack them. It's not Judaism, it's Zionism. And God should help really a free Palestine sooner nowadays. Spread the word. You can always go to our site, take whatever you like from our site, use it. And
what's your site, sir? Please, could you just tell us your site?
Yes, it is nkusa.org. For Nature Karta, nkusa.org. Call us. We go to every country besides Palestine. We have our people there, but I don't travel to Palestine, but to other areas. We'll always come, try to go to universities, to schools, to demonstrations. Call us. We will join you with God's help until God help a free Palestine.
Thank you, sir. I wish you health, safety. God bless you always. Thank you so much.
God bless. Thank you.
Goodbye.